everyone. Today's lesson is how to fill a body CAD with a textured overlay in Adobe Illustrator. What a textured overlay is anytime that you've created a pattern that is not a stripe or a plaid. Most times, well, sometimes plaids have them, but most times it's usually your printed patterns or your certain novelty weaves. They might have a textured overlay over them. So you can see, I'm going to zoom in on mine. I have this ECAT design that I created, and I put a little textured overlay over it to create the illusion of a textured fabric that this would be weaved into or printed on. So you can see when you have that, it's going to create a little bit of a complication for when you fill it in with your body CADs, because in order to actually put it in, it's going to create an extra body CAD layer on top of your printed design. So we're going to have to take this in a couple different stages, because you're going to have to not only make 3 different copies, you're going to have 3 different copies in this one CAD alone to be able to show not only the print itself but also the textured detail. So let's scroll down to here. Basically, first thing before you CAD any body CAD with a pattern, textured overlay or not, you're going to have to scale it to a smaller scale. So here's my original 100% scale of my pattern. This is the scale of the pattern that would actually fit a human being. This is the one that would be printed on yardage to fit a full-size person. Now our CADs are a lot smaller, as you can see. Usually the CADs that we draw are maybe 3 inches, 4 inches tall at best. So they're very small in comparison to the human-sized garment that we're making at the end. So you have to, every time you do a pattern into your body CAD, you have to scale it to roughly about a 20-25% scale, smaller scale than you have here, which is our 100% scale that is actual fitting a human being. You have to scale it smaller to fit this size CAD, because the CAD is so much smaller than a full-size garment. So that's what you have to do every time before you have to prep your fabric before you put it in your body CAD. Now the thing that makes it a little bit trickier, because we have this textured overlay on this print, I now have 3 different pieces that I need to put into my body CAD. I have a ground color, my pattern. The pattern and ground color come together to be one colorway, but then I have the textured overlay, and all those things need to be scaled smaller. Well, the ground color doesn't, but the print and the textured overlay do. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my print, or my pattern, doesn't have to be a print, it could be a woven. Take my full scale, 100% scale pattern, and I'm going to highlight over it with the black arrow. There are 2 ways that you can scale your pattern smaller. There's one using the black arrow. Here's the black arrow and the shift key on your keyboard. This is just one way. You can scale it a lot smaller this way, and you can actually see the scale of the pattern became a lot smaller, but also the swatch became smaller as well. Now I'm going to show you another way that you can scale, where you can keep the same size swatch. Like you see here, I have the same size swatch, but the pattern inside of the swatch becomes smaller. So this is just another way to scale, and I use this way a lot, but sometimes with new students it gets a little tricky. You have to kind of get the feeling for it. So the second way to scale is to use the scale tool and the tilde key. So let me zoom in here on the tilde key. Tilde key is on your keyboard, and it looks like this. It's usually right underneath the escape key, next to the number 1 and above the tab key. So look for that key on your keyboard first, find where it's located, and then you're going to go, this is the second way to scale, you're going to go to the scale tool. You click on the scale tool, and what you can see, it's actually highlighted my swatch. Now I'm going to hold down the tilde key, and this is where you have to be pretty exact on, and this is where some students get messed up. I want you see my little cursor right here, I'm kind of moving it here. Do you want to pull from a diagonal inward motion? See the way I'm kind of moving my cursor? I'm not doing anything yet, I'm just showing you how to do this. So you click on the scale tool, and then hold down the tilde key, but then this is the cursor I want you to watch before you do this at home. I'm pulling in a downward angled motion. Very steady, and you can see my pattern slowly getting smaller in scale. The swatch itself, the box, is not changing size, just the scale pattern is. Now what I want to show you is why you have to pull it from a diagonal motion. Is watch what happens when I try and pull the scale tool tilde key combo from a different angle. Like watch what happens here. See how it starts to distort my pattern? It starts to make those diamonds much narrower if I try and pull from any other direction other than that left diagonal direction that I did originally. So that's where I want to make sure, and watch if I try and scale this way. See how it distorts my pattern now? It makes it wider. So I want to make sure that when you use this, if you're going to scale your patterns this way, when you use the scale key and the tilde key, you have to pull, it's super important, a diagonal motion inward. And check and make sure that the scale of your pattern is not distorting. You want to make sure the scale of your pattern is just the same exact pattern, just smaller. If it starts to mess up your pattern in any way, then you just note where you're pulling from. It has to be this left diagonal inward, this diagonal inward motion. Let go of this tilde key when you're done scaling and you feel like it's at a roughly 20-25% scale smaller. And usually what I do when I'm scaling patterns is I like to have the body CAD actually next to it. So when you have your pattern swatch, I highly recommend that you put your body CAD next to the swatch and you look at the size of your body CAD in comparison to the swatch, and you kind of roughly imagine what that garment would look like in that smaller CAD view. And I think in this size CAD, like I said, this CAD's probably only about 3 inches tall. This pattern at 100% scale, I think would probably look at this 3-inch tall CAD would probably be the same look here in this CAD, but much in a smaller version. I think that was the way that this would be translated here. So I'm just going to roughly scale it. I can't tell you the exact percentage. You kind of just have to scale and eyeball it. And like I said, have your body CAD that you plan on putting it into next to it so you can kind of see, does it look like it actually would fit this garment? Does it look like the diamonds are going to repeat a few times across the garment? Because you don't want to use this scale because it'll be way too big. If you put the 100% scale in this body CAD, you'll probably get maybe 1, maybe 2 diamonds repeating at the most because it's so big. You want to make sure that your fabric is being repeated pretty generously through the CAD. So I scaled my pattern and I made sure that all my 3 layers, even though it's made up of a ground color, a pattern, and a textured overlay, I scaled them all together at once, so that I have these 3 different layers. And you don't need to break them apart like I did. Oh, actually you do. You do need to break them apart. So once you have it scaled, if they're grouped, just object ungroup them so that you can just pull them apart and you can see the 3 layers, right? Because you are going to need to actually do your body CAD in 3 different layers. So here's my body CAD. I'm getting ready to fill it in with my smaller scale pattern. And I broke apart, like I said, I broke apart my my pattern swatch to a ground color, a pattern, and a textured overlay. And the textured overlay and the pattern are both scaled smaller. So anytime I'm getting ready to fill body CAD, what I don't use is the black arrow. I use the white arrow always, because like for instance, when I click on this body CAD with the black arrow, you can see it's all grouped. And that's great, because at the end of the day, it should be grouped. But I don't need to ungroup it in order to fill it in with color and pattern. So if I don't use the black arrow, I don't need to ungroup anything. If I use the white arrow, all I have to do is click on the body CAD itself, like the exterior part of the body CAD, nothing inside, just click on the body CAD itself, and you can see that hopefully if you joined your shape, it should all be connected. And then all I have to do is eyedropper tool. I eyedrop onto my ground color. And you notice that none of these swatches have a black stroke outline around them. So look what happened when I did that for my body CAD. You saw that I lost my black stroke outline. So please make sure that you click on the stroke box. And once you click on the stroke box, your window color box should come up with your black and your white chip. Click on the black chip and bring that black stroke outline back, because that's super important. We don't want to lose that. Even though we eyedropped onto the ground color, and the ground color doesn't have a stroke outline on it because it's a fabric swatch and they shouldn't have stroke outlines on them, only body CADs do, I still want to make sure I bring back that stroke outline. So now that I have that first body CAD filled with the ground color, don't worry about the waist tie and the cuffs. That's going to be a separate tutorial. I'm going to copy and paste Command-C, Command-V, or Control if you're on a PC, instead of Command, and I'm going to make a copy of that body CAD that I just filled in with ground color. And now I'm going to make sure my fill box is on top, and I'm going to click with the eyedropper tool on my smaller scaled pattern. And you can see that I have that here. Now sometimes I put a black stroke outline around that, sometimes I don't. It really depends, because when I bring it over to meet the ground color, the black ground color body CAD already has a black stroke outline on it. So I might not need to add another one on top of this filled pattern body CAD. Now I'm going to copy and paste again, Command C, Command V, and now I'm going to do my third layer of body CAD, and that's going to be with the fill box on top. Take the eyedropper tool and go over my textured overlay, which was also scaled smaller earlier. So now I have a body CAD, and again, I don't always add a black stroke outline to that if I don't need to. So you can see my 3 layers right here. I got a ground color, a pattern swatch, and a textured overlay, all in the romper body shape that you saw me copy and paste from. And only one of them right now has the black stroke outline, and that's the ground color one. So once you have those 3 layers, you can bring them together. And usually what I do is I take them off the body CAD. So like the waist tie and the cuff, I'm going to show you separately how we're going to do that. But if I have my 3 layers, here's my 3 layers of body shape. I'm going to bring them all together, right? So I'm just going to start to merge them one over the other. And I pulled it off the body shape, like even though you saw me do it over here and have it all together, I'd rather you pull it off like this and do it separately and then bring it back to the body shape with all the waist tie and buttons and all that stuff later, because we have to fill the waist tie and the cuff separately. So now that I have these 3 pieces together, remember these were 3 pieces, I brought them all together. You can actually even go window align, and you can do an align to the top so they're all flushed together, and then you just start to bring them over together, line them up, and then you can do one more window align to the top, a window align to the side, and just making sure that all the layers are literally flush on top of each other. And then once I have that, I have it here. Let me just quickly I'm going to ungroup this CAD for a second, because I want to see when you actually bring them together, you want to actually, let me just delete this so you guys can see. So here's my 3 layers I just brought together. I'm going to bring it over back onto my body to where my body details are. And if this happens to you, that's why I wanted to delete that other CAD. If this happens to you, because those 3 layers that you have of body CAD shape with pattern are covering up all the details that you had. You had buttons, you had a waist tie, you had stitching, you had fabric motion lines, all being covered up. So you want to do, the next step is you want to go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back. Object, Arrange, Send to Back. And once you send it to the back, you're pushing that body CAD with all the layers of color and pattern behind everything else. So you sent it to the back, and that means that it's behind the top stitching, it's behind the buttons, it's behind the fabric motion lines, waist tie, cuffs. So you send it behind all that so that all those things can come to the front and you can see them again. So if you don't send it to the back, you're going to have all those details covered up, and I don't want you guys freaking out at home. So just remember our friend Object Arrange, and anytime something looks like it's covering up a detail, click on the shape that's covering it up and just do an Object Arrange Send to Back or Object Arrange Bring to Front. Whatever you're trying to do, either you're trying to cover up something or you're trying to reveal something that's hidden underneath. So now I have my body CAD behind everything. So what I wanted to tell you here is for the cuffs. So for the cuff detail, if you remember, we actually created a separate shape for that. So if I pull this off, I actually have 3 layers, just like I have for the body CAD, but we did just one body cuff, one cuff at the hem. So just like you filled the 3 body CADs in with a ground color, a pattern, and a textured overlay, you have to do the cuff the same way too, because it's not joined to the body, it's its own separate shape. So you can see that I pulled the cuff off for a second, I filled it with ground color, same thing, I dropped onto what I had up here. Hold on, my computer's freaking out. I just take my cuff, take my eyedropper tool, eyedrop on top, and then remember you got to bring that black stroke outline back again. So once you do that, once you eyedrop on any of those ground color, pattern swatch, or whatever, you want to make sure you bring that black stroke outline back onto it because it will disappear. So here's my first cuff filled with ground color, my second cuff filled with the smaller scale pattern, my third cuff is actually filled with the textured overlay. Now this textured overlay in the ground color cuff, I actually did a black stroke outline on. This one I didn't, the one that's filled with pattern. I didn't actually need it when I layered the three together. And then once you have those three together, so you're just going to take one, put it on top of the other. Ground color is always going to be at the back. And the textured overlay, let me zoom in one more time. Textured overlay is going to be on top of that. So you're just going to bring those three together. You can hover over them all, and we can go back up to a window align. And we can go, just to make sure everything's flush again, we can go horizontal align left. And then we can do a line, vertical line top. And that way you know when she layered all three of those things together, they are all flush against each other. And then you can do an object group, and then you can bring that back on top of your body CAD. Now, if anything looks like this when you're at home, if you put the cuff on top of your body CAD and it did that, I would just click on that grouped cuff you did again and do an object arrange bring to front. And again, because you want the cuff to be on top of the body CAD. So if you find that things hide behind something, just either object arrange bring to front. Make sure you select something before you do that. Object arrange bring to front if you need it to show itself on the front. If you want to hide it in the back, you do object arrange send to back. So for the cuff, we definitely want the cuff to be on top of the body CAD. So I'm going to stop there. We're going to do a second part video to how to conquer this waist tie detail.